Hello and welcome again, my friends, in the second video of Angular 17 series. So today we will get our machine set up and ready for our first Angular project, and then we will explore the auto-generated files of that project we created. Alright, let's get our dependencies installed. We'll start out with Node.js. Node.js is necessary to have npm installed as well. So it is easily downloadable from nodejs.org, and once you download that installation file, just double click it and go through the easy installation. And one thing you can do to verify that it is installed, open up your terminal and write the command node-v and npm-v. If it gives you back the version of node.js and npm, then you have both installed in your machine. Alright, the next step would be a quick fix for a common issue for macOS users when they try to use npm to install any global packages. They encounter an issue with permissions. To avoid that, we will manually create a global npm directory and point out our npm to that directory that we created and we own, so we don't get blocked by any permission denied errors anymore. Alright, this is easily done like so. Let's create a directory called npm-global in our root folder. After that, we will need to point out our npm to that folder, and we will do that by adding the folder location in the npm-rc file like so. And we also need to do something similar in the zshrc file as well. Finally, we will source the zshrc file to refresh our terminal. That would fix the permission denied errors that macOS user encounter. We will verify our fix in the next step when we try to install Angular CLI globally using the npm install-global Angular CLI. As you see, it's getting installed without any permission denied errors. Alright, now we need a code editor. You can use whatever code editor you like, but if you like to use VS Code, it is easily downloadable from the website. So the download button will automatically detect your operating system and will download the correct file for you. Let's now create our first Angular application. Open up your terminal and use the command ngenu with the name of your application. You'll get a couple of prompt questions. Answer first one with CSS and the second one saying no. The second one is basically asking if you'd like to enable server-side rendering in your application. We will get into that later in the course, but not in this video, so I will answer with no. And now the dependencies of our new Angular project is getting installed. It takes a few minutes, and after that it will try to initialize Git in the same directory of your first project. As you see, Git has been successfully initialized. Now let's cd into our directory and you try to get it running with the command ngserve-o, which is short for --open. Alright, this is how our first app looks. Looks great, and all the content in there is just a placeholder that we can later remodify and replace. Now it's time to take a look on the auto-generated files in our application that we just created with the Angular CLI. The list of files would look like this. We would have a source folder alongside some other files. Inside of the source folder, you'll find app folder that would have our first component, which is the app component. And as you see, every component we create in our applications comes with 4 files: CSS, HTML, spec for unit testing, and TS file that contains the business logic. We also have the app.config file. This is kind of a new file that Angular now creates that should contain all your providers and some other configuration that lived before in the main.ts file, but now it makes your main.ts untouchable and cleaner. We'll have a look at the main.ts file in a minute. After that, we have the routes file for that should contain all your application routes. Outside of the app folder, we have assets folder that is empty by default, and that should contain your images, icons, and so on. Then we have the index.html within the source folder. We don't often touch that file. And also the main.ts that we also don't often touch. And this file is the one that bootstraps your application. And we also have the styles.css that contains all your global styles. Outside of the source folder, we have few configuration files like the angular.json. This is the main config file for your application that contains the application name and the basic configuration for the most basic commands like the build, serve, lint, test, and all that. And we also have the npm package.json file that contains your npm dependencies and div dependencies, and also contains the application scripts. Like if you have a custom build command or a custom deploy command, you can add it there. And finally, we have the TypeScript config files. Let's now do a quick comparison between this list of files that we got when we created our application with the engineer command, and if we would have used the -- minimal flag with the engineer command. So the -- minimal flag is the one that I go for all the time because it gives you fewer files and it doesn't install unit testing by default, which is something that most of us don't use most of the time. So it makes your project cleaner and right to the point. And one other thing that I like about it, that instead of giving you 4 files every time you create a component, it actually gives you 1 file. As you see in here, all the logic of your app component now lives in 1 file. This would be ideal for very simple and minimalist component, but whenever your component gets bigger, I recommend that you separate the logic in separate files. We also don't get the tsconfig.spec file because it's unit test related config. And in the package.json, our npm dependencies are basically the same, but the div dependency are way fewer because we don't get all those unit testing packages installed. All right, my friends, that was it. We now have our environment set up. We have our first application up and running. We are fully ready for building great features, which we will do starting from the next video. And if you have any questions for me, make sure to leave it in the comments. I'll do my best to answer all of them, and I'll see you soon.